going to start with that breaking news this morning here that a 45-year-old man has been charged with attempted murder after two Jewish men were stabbed in Golders Green in North London on Wednesday. It comes after a recent spate of anti-Semitic attacks, which has resulted in the UK terrorism threat level being raised to severe, meaning an attack is highly likely in the next 6 months. The public should be alert and vigilant, but, quote, not alarmed. And just in the 30 seconds or so since we've been on air, we have seen some footage of a police van heading into court, which we understand to be the suspect, the 45-year-old man attending court. Well, let's speak now. Let's get the latest details from Lee Milner.
Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
What began as a targeted attack in Golders Green has led to a nationwide warning. The UK's terror threat level now raised to severe, with an attack highly likely in the next 6 months.
The UK has been experiencing a gradual increase in terrorist threats for some time, driven by a rise in both Islamist and extreme right-wing terrorism. Our casework is increasing across a number of ideologies, and within that, we are seeing an elevated threat to Jewish and Israeli individuals and institutions in the UK.
The suspected Golders Green attacker is 45-year-old Essa Suleiman. Born in Somalia, he came to the UK legally as a child. He was referred to the government's counter-terrorism prevent programme 6 years ago. After two Jewish men were stabbed, he was tasered and arrested. 76-year-old Moshe Shine was stabbed and is stable. 34-year-old Shloime Rand was also attacked after leaving synagogue. He spoke to us from his hospital bed yesterday and is now back home.
Statements coming out from Downing Street that they will not tolerate any anti-Semitism is not enough. The tone they talk about what's going on has to be changed.
The Prime Minister met the local Jewish community but faced a mixed reception, with some protesters booing outside. He's promised tougher action on anti-Semitism, including more policing, faster sentencing and new laws targeting hate preachers and foreign threats like Iran.
To turn our back, to check in the front, it's not a comfortable and nice feeling, because it can happen and I believe it will happen.
It's just got out of control. And it's got to be dealt with.
When we go out, I won't let my husband go out in a kippah. I always make him put a cap on, you know, outside Golders Green, because just don't feel comfortable. And why do we have to live like this?
Anti-Semitism is now the biggest national security threat since COVID, according to the Prime Minister's independent reviewer of terrorism legislation. With terror threat level at severe, there's growing urgency for action. Lee Milner, BBC News.
Well, we can speak to the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, Lord John Mann. Thanks for coming on the programme.
Morning.
Just going to underline, of course, as you will know, and many of our viewers will know, that someone has been charged in this in relation to this incident in Golders Green. So we're not going to address any of the specifics, particularly of that incident. But more broadly, what do you make of the threat level across the UK being raised today?
Well, that was inevitable with what's been going on. And we've seen these wave of attacks on the Jewish community, firebombing and so on, over a period of weeks. But that's on the back of a sustained hostility to people in the Jewish community in all aspects of their life. And I don't think the country quite understands what's been going on. You've got, you know, school kids go on a bus to school, get abused on the bus. Jewish children play a football match, get abused on the football pitch. People at work getting specifically targeted because they're Jewish. People at university who are ostracised because of how they identify as being Jewish. And this is cumulative. It builds up and builds up.
And what's the cause? What's led, in your opinion, to this build-up?
Oh, there are different things. The levels of extremism there is a group of extremists who are very well organised. But there's deep-rooted. I'll give you an example of what's so deep-rooted. It's one of the things that I've asked the government specifically to fund and address, and I hope they will. That in a number of, we found in an entire county in Hampshire that for a majority of schools for the last 100 years, for 100 years, every Easter, the children in most of the primary schools in Hampshire have been taught that the Jews killed Jesus. That has an impact over time, and it hasn't been challenged in 100 years.
But drawing that link, so that school in Hampshire, I don't have any...
No. A majority of primary schools in Hampshire for 100 years, just listen to me out, please, have been taught every Easter by the Church of England that the Jews killed Jesus. And it's only now that that's getting challenging. So that, there's some underlying causes that haven't been addressed. And then there's very short-term, immediate things in terms of conflict in the Middle East that's raised that, of course, to a whole new level in terms of the hostility to the Jewish community.
And how do you tackle it specifically with the incidents in the Middle East, other than underlining and drawing that sharp distinction between the actions of people in a different country to people just getting along with their normal lives here? What else can you actually do about that?
What you can do is you can define how free speech, which I'm a big supporter of, should be used. And if people want to have whatever views on the Middle East, then they're entitled to have those views. We live in a democracy. But if people then start calling to globalise the intifada, which is seen by some as a call to arms to attack the Jewish community, including in our country, that's not acceptable. That's inciting people to violence. And the police and the government have the difficult task of differentiating between language, words and actions that are specifically tagged in a community and legitimate debate and free speech. But the balance isn't working at the moment. People are going on demonstrations, are going in towns and cities across the country and calling for what some people hear as being, go attack the Jews. That's not acceptable, and that has to be stopped.
Can I ask you about one of the other striking bits of news this morning? We've had this controversy around the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, seeming online to question the actions of the police. What's your reaction to that?
His comments were rather pathetic. The police have got a very difficult job to do. Police officers having to intervene when someone's got a knife trying to murder people, who manage to apprehend that person without shooting him dead and arrest him. That's good policing, not bad policing. And police officers have an incredibly difficult time in this country dealing with violence and violent people. And I think the way the police are handling this kind of thing has improved dramatically over the last few years. I commend the professionalism of the police. And frankly, Polanski is so off the mark with his fancy politics. He should apologise to the police, apologise to them, and go tell them and say thank you for keeping our streets safe.
Lord John Mann, thank you very much for coming on the programme. And of course, we will be attempting to reach out to the Green Party for a response for that. Thank you. Let's cross live now to our correspondent in Golders Green. Lee Milner is standing by for us. Lee, just bring us up to date with what's happening there.
Yes, we've had that breaking news this morning that the suspected attacker, who is 45-year-old Essa Suleiman, has been charged with attempted murder. He was born in Somalia. He came to the UK illegally as a child. He will now appear in court this morning. Meanwhile, I don't know if you can just see behind me, this is Golders Green. The community are waking up to that news this morning. They've had
terrible few days, as you can imagine, since that incident on Wednesday. The incident happened in broad daylight, just an hour or so away from what it would have been right now. A nice sunny day, 11:30 in the middle of the day. And what the community have been telling me is that obviously they were overwhelmed and they were shocked at first, but now they're feeling anger, a lot of anger. We saw the Prime Minister come to this community yesterday. And he was met with a mixed reaction. He was heckled, he was booed. The reason being is that this community is simply frustrated. I've been to Golders Green a couple of times now on similar reports of incidents, and this is what people tell me, that it's happening more and more often. Only a couple of weeks ago, a few ambulances just down the road, owned by a Jewish charity, was set alight. Then a couple of days later, there was a war memorial that was destroyed as well. So this isn't the first incident that's happened. This is the third in just a couple of weeks. So there is a real sense of frustration here, a real sense of anger, because this community this is what they've told me, they don't want words, they want action.
Lee, thank you very much for that. Now, just at the top of the hour, I mentioned that we've had the first pictures of what we understand to be the police van carrying Essa Suleiman. He's the man who's been charged with attempted murder. And that is the arrival there into court just in the last 13 minutes or so. It happened just as we were coming on air. The 45-year-old inside the police van there is accused of attacking two Jewish men who were stabbed in Golders Green on Wednesday. Now, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner has defended how officers subdued the suspect in Wednesday's attack after the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, reposted a comment on social media condemning their actions. So Mark Rowley spoke to BBC Breakfast.
I wrote a forthright letter to him yesterday, which has been out on social media. I don't do that lightly. Politics is a matter for politicians, not for me. But when somebody who's eminent steps into operational policing and reinforces criticisms that will undermine the confidence of my officers to act in the protection of citizens, I need to step forward and say, no, that's not acceptable, because I need my officers to be confident in the most dangerous and difficult circumstances. I had two unarmed officers confronting a man who they were convinced was a terrorist. In their own view, in that moment, they were convinced of that, and even when he was on the ground, he wasn't cooperating. He wasn't releasing the knife. They were concerned because he had a rucksack and a puffer jacket. They were concerned as whether he may have explosive devices or anything else. And yet, despite being unarmed, they were confronting him. The fact they used very extreme force is, in my view, in that situation, completely reasonable. And I'm not sure there'd be many people on this call who'd like to be in their situation, and those officers need to know they've got my support. I'm grateful. The sort of correspondence I put online last night, the amount of public support for the officers that's come out from that, from social media, has been enormous, and I really appreciate the public backing them.
That was the head of the Met Police there. Well, speaking to our colleagues on BBC Breakfast as well was the Victims Minister, Alexandra Davies-Jones, and outlined what action the government is taking.
They need action, and they deserve action. This is about more than just platitudes, as you've said, and the time for warm words has come and gone. The funding that we announced yesterday, the extra £25 million for policing in Jewish communities near synagogues and schools, is something that we are doing in a direct response to the incident. But ultimately, this needs a long-term solution. This is about rooting out anti-Semitism from our country wherever it is occurring, whether that be in our NHS, in our schools, in our universities, on the streets or online. And the government is taking action by carrying out really important reviews here, looking at what more we can do. We will be fast-tracking legislation in order to prescribe the IRGC, for example, and we are working with criminal agency partners, criminal justice partners, to ensure that we are ensuring prosecutions are taking place swiftly, that justice is served, so that we can keep not just the Jewish community in our country safe, but everyone in our country safe, because an attack on the Jewish community is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on our British values and our beliefs, and that is unacceptable.
Let's speak to our political correspondent, Ian Watson. Ian, let's start with this issue around Zach Plansky, the leader of the Green Party, reposting a comment on social media, questioning the approach of the police in tackling the man on Wednesday. Unusually strong words from the Met Police Commissioner there.
Yes, there was. Yeah. So what Zach Plansky did, he didn't say this himself. He reposted a social media tweet. But what it said was that the police were violently kicking a man who was mentally ill and who'd been incapacitated by a taser. Certainly that reposting did not go down well with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. We heard him a little earlier saying he wrote a forthright letter to Zach Plansky. I can tell you just how forthright it was, Lewis. He said in that letter, "This is the kind of inaccurate and misinformed commentary that's contributing to rising tensions that we're seeing in society and undermines officer confidence to act." And then he went even further than that and said that, this may seem shocking to observers with little experience of policing in the real world. Now, this was a rare foray into party politics from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, but it has to be said that even members of Zach Plansky's own party are distancing themselves from what he did. So their party leader in Wales, for example, told the BBC this morning that it was inappropriate to have reposted that message. And last night on BBC's Question Time programme, the co-deputy leader of the party, Richard Millward, didn't criticise Zach Plansky directly, but did go out of her way to praise the bravery of the police and the emergency services, and she said they'd done a brilliant job. What the Green Party itself saying when approached directly about their leader's comments is that Zach had seen the video of the police obviously making the arrests. He doesn't know the full picture. He knows it was a very difficult situation for the authorities, but they do add, we do need to understand more about the response.
And Ian, more broadly, on the raising of the threat level across the UK today, can you just talk us through that?
Yeah, so it's been raised to the second highest level. That's now substantial. Critical would suggest there was more likelihood of an imminent attack, but that's substantial. That attack is highly likely in the next 6 months. What the Home Office are saying is that this, of course, is linked to the attacks we've seen on the Jewish communities, but there's also a wider backdrop to this as well, and that includes Islamophobia, includes far-right activity as well as anti-Semitic activity. Given that that's the case, of course, this has also raised questions about whether demonstrations should go ahead, including pro-Palestinian demonstrations. It looks like there won't be an outright ban, but that Metropolitan Police Commissioner is also saying there is action he can take too if people were making, for example, provocative comments such as globalised intifada.